Hi guys, my name is Tatiana, Life and Glow Wellness, and today I would like to offer you a tutorial how to build your astrological chart in a free online software. The most popular software among astrologers, both professional, amateur and those who are learning, is astro.com, also known as AstroDienst. Astrological charts can be different in type, and the main thing which a person needs to know is their birth chart, their natal chart. I often come across people who have never seen their natal chart, so I decided to create this tutorial so that each of you can easily create it yourself. So when you open this website, the first thing you see is this type of homepage. Go to this section, not logged in, so log in. So when you click on login, you see this type of screen, and then there are options to log in or to create registered user profile, or you can also do a temporary profile as a guest user. So the difference is that when you create a user profile as a registered visitor, then you have access to 100 charts. So you can create data for 100 people, for example, or different types of charts. So if you have a guest account only, then it allows you to have 4 charts, and it's kept for about 12 months, I believe. So if you log in and log out, the system might remember you. So I assume you have to be on the same computer, in the same browser, and then it might remember you. It's much more convenient to have actually a registered user profile, which I highly recommend to you. But for now, we'll just go with this, and then I'll click on create a horoscope immediately as a guest user. So what you see is that data privacy information, you can read it on your own. So I'll click I understand for now, and then it brings me to this type of screen. Once you are on the screen, you can already go ahead and put in your data. Natal chart, example 1, and let it be female, and I'll put actually today's date, and that is 10th of June 2019. Let it be like 1:35 p.m. So for example, if there was a baby who was born at that particular time, so we can see what kind of chart she or he would have. In this case, it's a she. I'll choose Canada, Vancouver, and so we'll go ahead and click it. So you can also show, hide, extended settings, but there are not a lot here, a lot of settings, so there are much more in a different tab I'll show you later. So for now, we'll just click continue. And you're brought to this type of screen, and some people might just get lost here. So where is my chart? In this case, you can click here, for example, chart drawing Ascendant, and it shows you the chart. So you can choose any name here, even a nickname or something like that if you don't want to put your personal data. And here you can save your chart. If you right click and you save image as, it shows you can choose where to save. I usually rename when I save, just to make it easier to recognize what it was. It's quite easy to do. You can also click on the chart, and then it would open in a different window, and you can still save it from here in the similar fashion. So this is pretty much how you build your chart, and another step would be to understand what this chart can tell you. Birth chart or natal chart is essentially a screen print of the positions of planets in the sky at the moment of your birth. So what you can see here is the famous astrological wheel, and that is the zodiac wheel. There are 12 signs of zodiacs which we'll look at, and each one has 30 degrees, but it does differ from a chart to chart where they will be positioned around this circle. Also, astrologers look at the 12 astrological houses, which might not be equal in size depending on the house system. Some people call them slices of pizza or pie, just to make it easier to understand for people, but essentially they represent spheres of life, and we look at 12 different spheres of life. Traditionally, we go from the eastern side of the chart, from the first house to the 12th house, and in this case, actually, the first and the 12th, they start in the same sign, if to take into account Placidus house system. In equal house system, they would be in different signs. Unless you maybe practice Vedic astrology, I would suggest to use Placidus for a start. Also, you see 4 angles, AC, MC, DC, and IC. Ascendant, or the rising sign, represents which sign was rising on the east, when you were born, and so in this case it's actually Virgo, 26 degrees of Virgo. Ascendant is our social mask, how people see us and how we project ourselves to the world. And DC, Descendant, our partnerships, is the western point, closest to the west. And the other important point of the chart is MC, or career point, which is always on the top of the chart, and it's basically the most visible point to the public, so you in the public eye. And opposite it will be IC, also known as Imum Coeli or Nadir. And these angles, they are beginning of certain houses. Ascendant always starts the first house, and IC 4th house, DC 7th house, and MC 10th house. Western astrologers look at 10 celestial bodies, and that is Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. We call them planets just to simplify the terms, although technically Sun is a star and Moon is a natural satellite which orbits around Earth, and also we consider Pluto a planet, although there is a debate about that as well. So what we look at here is where those planets live, which particular sign of zodiac and which house. You can see a table with planetary positions for the moment of your birth. For example, Sun is at 90 degree Gemini, 41 minutes, 0 seconds. Well, seconds is not as important in this case, but minutes can be important. Moon is on the 27th degree Virgo, 42 minutes. We look at the three elements, the core elements of the person and of the chart. It's Sun, Moon, and Descendant. And Ascendant is conjunct the Moon in this situation, which is very interesting because it tells on the whole personality. Of course, such a position will really tell on the character of the person and events because it's a very significant position. So when any planet is so close to the cardinal point, I highly recommend to rectify the chart and to double check one way or another whether the planet is in the previous house or in the next house. In this case, whether the Moon is in the first house or it's in the 12th, because just a few minutes can change the position of the planet. Rectification is a special procedure when astrology analyzes a lot of different charts and through life events helps you find out the real time. This chart actually is a great example to show how important it is to know the time of birth, talk to your parents, and also find records, the official records of your birth. In North America, often there are some records. In some developing countries and also even in Russia, sometimes it's difficult to find out birth time. Even if you think you know your birth time, especially when it's rounded up like 1 p.m. or 6:30 or 10:45, most likely it is not exact, and I would recommend to rectify the chart, even though there are some debates about how reliable rectification is. But when this time is known so close, within 15 minutes, it's much easier to rectify the time when it's known within, especially beyond 2 hours. If you're not into learning astrology deeper, even knowing just the big three, your Sun, Moon, and Descendant, will help you to listen to various astrological forecasts if you're into that, and you can use auspicious times for various types of things. So some astrologers base their forecasts on the Sun sign, and some of them they mention Ascendant. In this case, the person would have to listen to the Gemini forecast and to Virgo. Now, if you don't know your time of birth at all, so you can choose by default as 12 p.m. or if you know, for example, you're born early morning, you can choose 6 a.m. Another option is to build a sunrise chart, and I'll show you how to do that in a different video. When you choose the time, there is actually an option to choose unknown. So it mentions here 12 p.m. hypothetically, so which means that the time is unknown, so it by default takes it as 12 p.m. which actually you can do also manually. You can set the time to 12 p.m. and this is the so-called noon chart. So as we can see here, we don't have the astrological wheel anymore with houses. You will get this so-called cosmogram, which is essentially as if it's a print screen of the sky in terms of position of planets. But in some cases it's not very reliable. For example, if the Moon is very close to the cusp between different signs, then we cannot say for sure that the moon is in Virgo. We would need to double check what exactly was happening on that day. I plan to do it for another video, but I can mention here that what I do personally is I check the beginning of the day and the end of the day, and I see how much the moon moves throughout the day. Moon travels through the sign for about 2 or 3 days, so every 2-3 days it would change the sign. And for example, when the moon is so close at 12 p.m., so we do know for sure that it is changing the sign on that day, going into the next one. So in this case, you cannot really rely saying that your moon is in Virgo, because your moon might be in Libra. However, you can calculate when was the time when the shift was, and maybe somehow through personal research or through rectification you can find out the actual position of the moon. Neighboring signs usually are very different in energy, so there is a way to find that out. Now, we do not see here house division at all, so we cannot work with house cusps, and you can't check your forecasts and whatever for your ascendant, because you do not know what your ascendant is. Throughout the day, all 12 signs could be on the ascendant, so some people try to guess it through traits of characters and other things, but I think it's quite difficult to do it. Maybe it's probably just better to try to figure out the moon's position, at least to know the moon sign. And that already gives you some material to work with. I will make a separate video on what you can actually take into account if you don't know your time of birth. There are still things you can find out about yourself, and you can work with them, but there are some timing techniques, forecasting techniques, which cannot be used without being sure exactly where your ascendant is. Many planets which are moving slower than the moon, they are more or less reliable unless they're changing the degree or they're changing even the sign on that day. Then you have to double check that. And there's another method for that, but I think it's a little bit too much for this video, so I don't want to overwhelm you guys. So now if we take another look at this chart, so what else do we notice here? Of course, someone who is new to astrology will first thing notice the shape of the chart and the lines, the colorful lines. Now, colors of the lines highly depend on the system. AstroDienst shows in red aspects like squares and oppositions. These are hard aspects or tense aspects between planets and important points of the chart. And blue lines are usually trines and sextiles, and these are softer aspects. Essentially, the color does depend on the software, and in some software you can tune up to your taste. You can see here also aspect table, and this table can vary from a software to software in the look. In this case, it's quite easy to find out which aspect is between which planets if you know the glyphs of the planets. So it's really important to remember and learn glyphs of the planets. And there's also a small table showing here positions of planets in regards to elements and modalities. It's interesting that here there are practically no planets in the fixed signs. There's only Uranus, which is now in Taurus, and Taurus is a fixed sign. And essentially most planets are in cardinal or mutable signs, which of course will tell on the character of the child. That's a little bit more advanced stuff. I think it's just another step in analyzing the chart. I don't want you to jump at everything at once, but for those who are already familiar more or less, you can see it here. This particular video is not for analyzing, interpreting the chart. I would even suggest to consult a professional to do that, and keep in mind that different astrologers might have different opinion about your chart, and also many, especially in this position when the moon is so close to the ascendant and 2 other planets are close to cardinal points, they might want to first rectify your chart, which is either within consultation or for a separate fee. I highly advocate taking a professional consultation, and it's even good to take a consultation from a few astrologers. Choose people who you can relate to, who you like. Vedic perspective might be quite different from Western perspective, because even often planets can be considered to be in different signs. So keep that in mind, and don't be surprised if some interpretations are highly different. Also, different software sometimes calculate charts in a different way from my experience. And that can also tell on what you get in your report. The lines also does depend on the software, how it is set, what kind of orbs are taken, and orbs are essentially differences between degrees, and that is the angle between the planets. And we have 360 degrees for the whole wheel, and orbs can be set for different amount of degrees. Usually they are within 1 or 10 degrees maximum. For moon and for sun, often wider orbs are taken, and for other planets more narrow. So in some cases you might not actually see some lines on the chart just because in the software orbs are set in a different way. So you can imagine the amount of work one has to do to really put things together. It's kind of like puzzles of one big picture, and you don't always know where it will get to. As one astrologer told, even after 30 years of professional practice, he still finds something new in his chart. With time and experience, you'll be able to learn to separate most important from less important, and that will help you to build some astrological practice, whether you're an amateur or you want to be professional. If you go to free horoscopes and extended chart selection, and you will see more settings. And this is actually a topic which I planned for another video, what to choose here to play a little bit more with what is visible on the chart, but also it gets quite complicated at this point. You see there are lots of options and you might not be even sure, like, is this the right thing to choose? I felt like that when I started, and I was kind of overwhelmed because I thought, what happens if I choose something different? As a beginner, just choose a tropical system, zodiac, unless you're a Vedic astrologer, and choose geocentric. Pretty much follow default settings, and then you will be in the safest place. Once you know a bit more and you want to see more on your chart, you can add what is needed. So there are also different types of charts which you can build. The main important thing, apart from the maybe natal chart wheel and birth data, is house system. So default usually is Placidus, especially when you start. Placidus is a great house system to start with, unless maybe you're born in the Northern Territories. That's a trickier case, and not every astrologer works with such charts. For now, we just use Placidus. There are many house systems, and so it's a very complex, controversial topic in astrology. There is a constant debate which house system is better. With time, you'll make your preference and you'll choose what to work with, if you decide to continue learning astrology, which I encourage, of course. So if you would click here, show the natal chart, and let's say just for fun, I'll choose here descending node as well, so that we have something different. So you see, here is the usual layout. It's a little bit big on my screen for some reason, so I use Ctrl-, and so it allows you to fit the screen, and you can save image as a file, and you will have it in your folder. Now once we see this chart, so you already see this south node here as well, which is conjunct Saturn in this case, and even Pluto quite close. We can also say like a triple conjunction, which is natural because now we're going through this generational thing, like when there is a big conjunction which people are waiting for, which it will happen in January, in mid-January I would say. Pluto will conjunct Saturn. Now both of them are retrograde. That's another thing which we take into account. And if you take a quick look here, you will see the R, which means that these planets are retrograde. All right. Now what you can also see here, there is an aspect table. At the previous chart version in the horizontal form, we had it on the left, but here it's in this form. I find it actually is a little bit difficult sometimes to read it, but it's easier in the horizontal format if you enlarge it. But you can still see some aspects, and then you can always take a look at the chart itself. Alright, so if now we are on the home page, and how do you find your chart? So where is the chart if you lost it? So you just go back to either free horoscopes, or you can go to extended chart selection, and you will see, if you have a few charts, you will see a list of charts which you can choose from to build a particular chart. All information is stored here. If you click guest user, and for example in my case I will have here Life and Glow if I have my other account. Try to open it in a different browser it might not actually recognize you, so you would have to create a different account. So I definitely recommend you to create a registered account, and here there is an option to do that. So if you click on it, you can click understand and you can fill out the profile, and it will send you a link to your email. It's quite easy, it's very intuitive, so you can do it anytime, and then you'll just log in with your password as usual, and you'll have access to 100 charts instead of 4 charts. If you want to add another astro data, you just click here again and then you fill it out. There are more videos which I plan to do later, so please stay tuned, subscribe to my channel, and you will learn more how to use this wonderful resource. If you want to have a consultation in astrology, I do combine it with other methods which I practice, astrological counseling, and also metaphorical cards counseling, which is a contemporary method in counseling therapy, and also I do life coaching with creative techniques. Anyways, there's one more thing which I wanted to show you, and that is if you click on personal portrait, you can actually make a free report here for you. Because the person has to be older than 6 years, the age of 6 years, I cannot do the chart for this one. So I'm going to change the day, let's say, to 2003. It's just a random year. So, and then in this case, if the person was born on this date, so this would be the description for his horoscope. Of course, those free reports, as you might have already noticed through doing it on some other websites, they are very general, and at times they might be a little bit dry, like boring to read, or maybe at least I am not as good at that. I also recommend you can just enlarge this font if it's difficult to read for you, and you can even save it into a document or change the font if it's easier. You can look around. There are different types of horoscopes, paid and free, and you can just think which one is worth the investment. I do advocate for also booking a session with an astrologer. There are lots of great astrologers. Some of them have YouTube channels, so you could just see who you relate to and take a consultation from them, which would be more expensive though, so sometimes it makes sense to also have this type of reports. When you read a report, be prepared though that it might not really be something which kind of describes you to the point. So because it depends on the time of birth, and also machine is machine, even though it's created by a person. There are a few great astrologers working for this website, but still it's not as personalized as a consultation would be. It's really a big advantage to understand your chart, and that's why I think everyone has to look at the chart and analyze it. Now, the best thing is to learn through experience, and you can just compare certain things, and maybe it will help to make your life more fulfilling if you need it. Keep learning astrology. It's a very fascinating field. It never keeps you bored because there's always something to discover. There are lots of controversial topics. At the same time, it's fascinating and it's really insightful. Those who are learning astrology already have difficulty looking at life without astrological glasses. With time, you'll learn what works for you, what doesn't. You'll try it through practice and you will understand it better. Alright guys, so that is my video for today, and I hope that it piqued your interest and you will keep learning astrology. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. I'd be happy if you watch my other videos, and goodbye.